Now let's look at what's on the front pages today. We'll start with Nigerian newspapers. So this day, Dangote says, I have paid $2.4 billion of $5.5 billion borrowed to build refinery. He also eyes steel production. And then still on this day, Tinubu's Dobale military parade, cultural displays highlight Democracy Day celebrations. Let's go to Vanguard. Do we have Vanguard? Yes, eminent citizens, elder statesmen chart way forward. Do we have, what other paper do we have? Do we have Punch? Federal government warns of mass sacking as Labour disowns agreement. What else is there? Which other paper do we have? Independent. Federal government asks Labour to settle for what won't lead to mass retrenchment. So already advising Labour to make sure that they accept the agreement or the so-called agreement that has been reached. Do we have any other local papers there? Daily Trust. Only 5.3 million workers will benefit from new minimum wage. And then The Guardian, still talking about Nigeria's unity. Nigeria's unity cannot be traded with your support. I won't fail, Tinubu is telling Nigerians. That was during the Democracy Day celebrations yesterday. He is promising once again that he will do whatever is possible to make sure that he doesn't disappoint Nigerians. We have leadership also. Labour forced Tinubu's speech, insists on 250,000 naira. Of course, the tussle between Labour and the federal government still goes on. An agreement hasn't been reached yet. And then we have the international papers, mad scramble for new government. That's according to the Citizen newspaper. And Business Day. South Africa edges closer to unity in diversity. And then we have the Daily Graphic from Ghana. Purge toxic political space. Afenyo Maki urges media. And then we also have down there NHIA settles for some 300 million claims. Do we have any other international papers? Okay, so that's it for now. So let's go to our newspaper review this morning. I have with me in the studio Dr. Iyobosa Uwugiaren, who will be looking at the front pages with me today. Welcome, Dr. Iyobosa.
Thank you, Dr. Costas.
Yeah, happy Democracy Day, second day. You know. So let's talk about this day. Let's go to the story on Dangote. Dangote says, I have paid 2.4 billion of 5.5 billion borrowed to build the refinery. Whether you like him or not, he seems like a very ambitious man. He's daring, he's bold, he's audacious.
So you are right. Yesterday I watched him on Arise TV when he was talking in the Hamas. It was an opportunity for him to explain what the Dangote refinery is doing, and said the entire project to the whole world. And I watched that on Arise TV yesterday. Yes, you remember when he was, when that refinery was initiated, I think he borrowed about $19 billion.
$19 billion, yes, $19 billion.
Yeah, and it got to a point that it was even finding it very difficult to move on, and the CBN had to intervene on behalf of the federal government. And yesterday, I think he told the whole world that out of the money that he had borrowed, I think he had paid about
2.4 billion he has paid already.
Yeah, and that is it's a sign that the man is serious with the investment, and that he has the capacity to also develop that refineries. For me, that refinery is also positioning Nigeria in a global market, and not just Nigeria, maybe the entire Africa. And I'm sure at the end of the day, the whole Africa will benefit from what Dangote is doing, especially Nigeria. And from the way it is positioning the refineries, it also appears that Dangote will also be able to compete, in the global market. Like I said yesterday, there's a cartel within the oil sector, and it's obvious that from what he says, it's obvious that the world is not interested in the African development. But the fact that he has been able to rally around some of the financial sectors within the African and to develop that sector is a sign that Dangote is very serious with the investment.
I mean, some will make the argument that he's very close to government. Every government cycle, he has his weight, so that's why he has a lot of support. However, there's also the argument that you do need a lot of Dangotes all over Africa. You need thousands of them actually in order to develop the local economies. Yeah,
well, for those who are saying that because Dangote is very close to the government, that's why he's having that support. With the kind of investment that Dangote is investing in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria, in West Africa and African, there's no way he will not be very close to the government. Well, the government might also be assisting, but in a way, Dangote is an asset. Not just to Nigeria, but just in entire Africa. For example, look at Nigeria. Do you know how many people that Dangote employed in Nigeria? So it's a very strategic organization for the entire Africa. So there's no way he will not be close to the government.
There's also the point that he got a lot of support from Afrexim Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, and Access Bank. Doesn't it talk about the role that African corporations, African banks have to play within the continent, because they understand the peculiar circumstances that we face better?
Yes, of course, and they are doing that very well. And like you said yesterday, there's need for this bank to recapitalize their bank so that they'll be able to make maybe huge interventions in businesses in not just in Africa. And I think Afrexim Bank and other financial sectors in Africa are doing just that. They are interested in growing Nigerian economy. They are interested in growing African economy. But I think they are working towards that. And for me, that is the right way to go.
So let's quickly go to Punch newspaper. Federal government warns of mass sacking as Labour disowns agreement. There was a group, or a tripartite, group that met and agreed. But Labour is saying we do not agree, and federal government is warning. Is that a threat?
Well, I think the federal government should be very careful not to blackmail the Nigerian Labour Congress, because during the negotiation, the position of the NSA is very clear that they are insisting that they're insisting on the 250,000 naira minimum wage. The federal government is saying, oh, what we can afford is about 62,000 naira, and the governors also came with their own. But I think if you look at the reality in Nigeria today, what the federal government is suggesting or what the state government is suggesting is not helpful at all. They should find a way to, look at what they agree on and see how they can, find a middle ground in resolving this matter. But definitely 62,000 naira is not just enough at all. Looking at the situations in Nigeria today.
Yeah, but what would be enough? There's two divides of this argument. So the federal government, if they pay, let's say, 150,000 or 200,000 naira, that's a lot on government budget. Already we spend so much on recurrent expenditure. And then on the side of Labour, yes, we understand that we're facing a financial crisis, so 62,000 is very little for a family. So where's the middle ground here?
I think if you look at it, if the federal government want to be sincere, there's a way they can cut down their cost, and being able to pay that, being able to pay what the Nigerian Congress is asking for. For example, if you're asking a worker, for example, to accept 62,000 naira, it's not the same market that the workers, go with those who earn about 28 million to 29 million naira at the end of the day. So if they are serious in resolving the matter, the federal government should also find a way to cut down the way they spend money. And you see some of the governors, going on a private jet. Some of the governors collecting as much as almost about 800 million naira as security vote every month. So when people like that keep on telling Nigerians that they can't pay 62,000 naira, there's no way that argument will resonate with Nigeria at all. For a governor who collects almost about 800 million naira every month as security vote, what is he doing with such money? And they spend money on other issues. Other things that are not relevant. So I think the purpose of government is to be able to, is the welfare and security of the people. And once you are unable to do that, you have no business existing as a government. They can pay. I think they should look for ways to cut down their expenditures in so many irrelevant things that do not make sense to Nigeria.
So essentially, the belt tightening measures should go across board.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's look at the vanguard. Eminent citizens, elder statesmen chart a way forward. I mean, there was an event in Lagos, and it's the usual that attended: the Chief Emeka Anyaoku, Bishop Matthew Kuka, Senator Ikenwachuku, Joe Odumaki, and a host of other people. And they're saying, you know, that Nigerians or nations, so Emeka Anyaoku, for instance, said that nations that fail to address their diversity eventually disintegrate. He, you know, used examples of Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Sudan, you know, and a host of other countries. What do you agree with him?
But I want to believe that the other statements are worried about the state of our country, and is on record that after almost 25 years of Nigeria returning to democracy, we are still having the issue of good governance, we are still having the issue of unity, national integration, and what have you. And these are some of the issues that the present government should be able to address. Because for you to make democracy very attractive, there must be dividend of democracy. People must be able to feed impact of democracy. It is not just enough to say that, oh, the military is no longer fashionable in Nigeria. But the truth of the matter is that if you want to set democracy, the people should be able to benefit, people should be able to feel the impact of democracy. If you look at Nigeria today, almost about 60% of the voting populations, I'm talking of the youth, were born, you know, after 1999. In other words, many of them do not even know what Nigerians suffer under the military regime. I bet if you ask some of the youth today to choose between the military and the civilian government, you might guess what would be their answer. So the point I'm making is that in order to be able to set democracy to Nigeria, in order to be able to make democracy very attractive, there must be benefit of democracy. People should be able to feel the impact of democracy, you know, rather than just talking about, oh, the military government is no longer fashionable, oh, we must remain as one Nigeria. For you to remain one Nigeria, it's not something you just, it's not a rhetoric, it's something you have to deliberately engineer and sustain it and make everybody, all parts of the country, to feel a sense of belonging in our country.
So you have to work towards it. So let's look at some of the ideas of democracy. This is 25 years.
Yes.
And people are hoping that we'll be able to make the next 25 years. Freedom of speech is one of the ideals. Rule of law. Political participation, respect for human rights. We still have challenges in some of those areas. Yeah. Plurality of parties, separation of powers, independence of the different branches of government. We're not doing so fantastic in a couple of those areas.
Yeah, if you look at where we are coming from, I'm talking of from the military regime, and I'm sure you were in this country as a journalist, I'm sure you know what we experienced during the military era. And I want to believe that we've made some gain, even though there are still some issues. There are still some challenges of good governance, challenges of corruption, challenges of insecurity, you know. And but I think those are something we can deliberately, you know, tackle. Yes, we still have some couple of press issues. For example, in the last few weeks, so many journalists have been arrested and taken to court under the guise of enforcing the Cybercrime Act. For us, that is not a very good signal for Nigerian democracies. Because whether we like it or not, the oxygen of democracies is free media, freedom of expressions. And once you take that away from democracy, you don't have democracies. But I think, like I said, we have made progress in the last 25 years, but there are still some issues that the government must address. And the person to address this issue is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, somebody who was involved in the democratic struggle along with other forces, along with the media, in ensuring that we have this democracy that we are enjoying today. So I think he's in a better position to address some of these issues. And he must closely watch his security agencies in order not to give him a bad reputation.
Now that you mentioned the security agencies and the freedom of speech, in one of the papers today, Labour was talking, it's Vanguard, I think, Labour was saying that they were intimidated and harassed by security agencies during the negotiations because they wanted them to back down. And they're implying that the president is not aware of this and the president should be told the truth.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was saying. And that in any part of the world, in any democracy, strike is allowed. It's within their fundamental human right to agitate for their welfare. And if the federal government is not ready to listen to them, and one of the weapons they can use, to force the government or to persuade the government to accept their demand is strike. So in a democracy, it is legitimate. And for the security agencies to want to, harass them, to back out of that action, for me is uncalled for. And for us to say that anybody is not even aware, but I don't think that is the case, because whether we like it or not, all security agencies report to the president directly. I'm sure there's no way the president would not be aware. But I think what is happening is that the security want to let him know, oh, if we use this kind of force, I'm sure they will be able to persuade the Labour to back out of that action. But for me, under a democratic system, under democracy, such action is unacceptable, is illegal.
I mean, let's also go back to Punch. This is an inside story that I picked up. I thought it was very important. It says here that 80 billion naira fraud, EFCC accuses colleagues, others of shielding Yahaya Bello, the former governor of Kogi State. And so the zonal director of EFCC, Mr. Efa Okim, was speaking. He was just asked by journalists about this case since, the EFCC failed to arrest Yahaya Bello. He was declared wanted. There was a failed attempt to arrest him. No one knows where he is today. What does that say of our country? Does it make a mockery of us?
But I think, yes, the matter is before the court, but I think Yahaya Bello, the former governor of Kogi State, is almost getting away with the alleged financial crime that he committed. But I know very well that the EFCC on several occasions had made an attempt to invite him to respond to some of these allegations. He deliberately refused. You remember the other time, the chairman of the EFCC even threatened that if he cannot prosecute Yahaya Bello, then they will no longer have moral justification to also prosecute others who were accused of financial crime. Even when the court ordered that Yahaya Bello should be produced in court, today we don't even know where Yahaya Bello is. For me, for such thing to be happening under this present government, especially the government that is said to be committed to war against corruption, for me, it's something we cannot even explain. But I doubt whether the security agencies are not aware of where Yahaya Bello is.
Yes.
There's a lot of politics around this matter.
I mean, Okim said that he thinks that the system is shielding the former governor.
Exactly. I want to believe that. Because if Yahaya Bello is in this country, are we saying that the police, the DSS, and other security agencies are not even aware of where Yahaya Bello is? But I think for me, it's going to be a very bad image for this government. If other governors, ex-governors, prominent people, including so many people in the CBN are being prosecuted for alleged corruptions. So why is Yahaya Bello so important that it cannot be asked to fix some of the allegations that have been leveled against him? When EFCC invite you, it's not that they are going to detain you. You'll be able to respond to those questions. And if they have legitimate ground to charge you to court, so you'll be charged to court, and you have your way to defend yourself in a competent court of law. And at the end of the day, the court will determine whether he was corrupt when he was in government or not. But I think Yahaya Bello should be able to submit himself to the authority. And all the security agencies must do everything within their power to ensure that Yahaya Bello is meant to answer to those allegations leveled against him by the FCC.
Yeah, so finally on this particular story, so I quote, okay, this is the last question I expected because the shame is on all of us. Is that a question I should answer alone? It's not me. It's the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It's really a shame on all of us.
Very big one, very big one. I'm sure there was a time the Attorney General of the Federation also issued a statement insisting that the Yahaya Bello must answer, must come to the FCC to answer those allegations against him. The fact that nobody has been able to arrest Yahaya Bello police, DSX, and other security agencies, for me, is a big shame, and it's not a good reputation for this present government.
So let's go to the Independent newspaper. Here it says that some governors encouraging youth to be criminals to rig election. That is according to former President Goodluck Jonathan.
Well, I think the Independent is just reporting what we all know in Nigeria. You know very well that the governors are just like emperor in their own state. We've seen a situation when during the election, they arm the thugs to be able to rig election for them. And not just that, look at the local government election that they conduct. It's from all parties. You know, if you're APC, you're a PDP. If a governor under the platform of PDP, you know, conduct a local government election, at the end of the day, you'll be sure that all the local government will be cleared by the ruling party in that state. I think that is one of the major problems we have in our democracy since 1999. There is no check and balances within the state government. The governors behave as if they are emperor. They determine. I mean, we don't even have state house of assembly because state house of assembly is under the pocket of the governor. So they determine what they do and what they will not do. So at the end of the day, they behave as if they are emperor. I think it's hard time, maybe during the ongoing constitutional review process, we should be able to strengthen. How to ensure that the governors, you know, behave in line with the dictate of democracy.
And, you know, when you look at it, you can also just oppose what's happening generally. You know, all the events to mark Democracy Day, there were a lot of much elderly people that have been on the scene for over 30 years. You'll be expecting to see younger people who have taken over, who have been groomed, and instead they are being used during elections.
Who do you blame, the governor or the youth? We've seen, for example, in Senegal, what the youth did recently in their elections. And they were determined to take their country back. And they went all out to ensure that their vote counts. And at the end of the day, the person they voted for, you know, won that election. In Nigeria, the youth is more concerned about their game during the election. You know, they are ready to, you know, to be used as talks to ring elections for maybe for money. And at the end of the day, it is the youth that will definitely, you know, pay the price. What are we talking about today? And that's why somebody said it serves all right, because during the election, some of us were allowed to be used by politicians to ring the election. And today, that action is already telling on all of us. So at the end of the day, you're not going to blame the governor for using the youth. It is the youth that we should blame for allowing themselves to be used by politicians to do all kinds of dirty jobs and criminal, carry out so many criminal activities. Okay. You know, in this government. For me, I think it's not the government that should be blamed. It is the youth. Okay,
Yobosa, sit back. We're coming back. You're watching Daybreak coming from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. When we return, we will continue with the newspaper review. It's Daybreak on Arise News. We'll now be looking at what is in the international papers. Do we have Financial Times? Okay, Daily Mail. Let's look at Daily Mail. A Tory wipeout risks one-party socialist state. Okay. Then we have The Guardian. Sunak aide bet on election date before announcement. And The Mirror, Daily Mirror, 1 year of hell. There's a lot of hell going on there. Then The Times, growth and prosperity are priority, says Starmer. And then we have The Sun, both leaders get a lashing. And then there's an exclusive psychic aid, 3 lions, mystic wag. A lot of interesting stories on that front page. Then the Daily Express, ticking time bomb, 3.6 million at high risk of diabetes. Then Labour set to announce big cuts to public services in UK. And then we have the Daily Telegraph, Starmer paves the way for tax rises. A lot of tax rise conversations going on there in the UK ahead of the elections. And then the Financial Times is talking about energy here. Energy watchdog foresees a staggering oil glut very soon, by the end of the decade. And then we have Metro. I lost my whole family in e-bike explosion. What a tragic, sad event. And then we have the Daily Star, three lions on a shed. And then we have the New York Post. Don't let hate hide. So you're talking about hate there. We don't want a society where there's so much hatred for one another. And then the Washington Post, a couple of stories on the headlines there. What other newspapers do we have? The Australian, the Union strong arm grips Virgin. The Jerusalem Post is talking about Hezbollah there. Of course, the crisis, the war that is going on between Gaza, Palestine, and Israel. The Japan Times, Tokyo's Koike seeks re-election as governor. Election time in Japan as well. Elections going on all around the world. China Daily says Xi urges more contributions to education there. Okay, so I think that's what we have for the international papers now. So let's go to the Guardian. Let's start with the Guardian newspaper, where it says that Israel and Hamas guilty of war crimes. It says UN body. This is a UN body that has carried out an investigation into the war in Palestine and is accusing both sides of being guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. That's a significant verdict right there.
Yes, we are right, especially coming from the UN agency. Of course, you remember October last year when Hamas raided Israel and killed about 1,400 people, and about 240 people were held hostage. I think that was the genesis of the whole crisis. And later, the Israel, retaliated and bombarded the Hamas, and leading to the killing of about 10,500.
No, there's more killings going on every day.
I'm just trying to trace the genesis of the whole thing.
Yes.
And ever since then, there have been more killings from both sides, especially coming from the Israel. And thousands of people have been killed. Thousands of people have been held hostage. And at the end of the day, it is the children, the women that are the main victims of this war from both sides. Even to the extent that even hospitals where victims were being, were kept and being treated by the medical doctors and other medical officers were bombed. So I think it's a huge impact on both sides. And at the end of the day, it is both sides, the Hamas and Israel, that are affected as far as this war is concerned. I think the UN should just move beyond that, rather than giving verdict. They should move beyond that and rally the entire world and see how they can put an end to that war.
That's interesting that you said that, because I was going to say that the Commission has no power to impose any penalties on either of those countries. So is this a waste of time?
It's a waste of time. So, and that's exactly what I'm saying, that the UN should be able to mobilize the entire world and see how they can negotiate the end of this war, because it's senseless. And both parties, they made their point. And I think there's no word that will go on without resolutions. I am aware that there are efforts to resolve the issue. I think the big power, I'm talking of the US, the UK, and other big powers within the global community, should be able to move very fast and end this war. It's senseless. It doesn't make sense.
So it also shows that globally, the world is kind of broken, because it's difficult to even use the United Nations to come to an agreement on something such as important as a war that is ravaging and destroying a country.
Yeah, I agree with you that the superpower are divided. There are some of them who are supporting Hamas, others are also supporting the Israel. But I am saying that within the mandate of the UN, within the mandate, we are going to follow the mandate of the UN. the instrument, setting up the UN, there are processes that is well spelled out in the instrument that they can use to resolve this crisis. And that's why the UN was created, to be able to, mitigate some of these things in the global politics. Anytime there's conflict, there's disagreement within the global community, the UN should be in a position to resolve the issues. And that was the purpose, and that is the mandate of the UN. And they should be able to enforce that mandate in resolving Hamas and Israel's
So let's go to the Financial Times. So it says here that the energy watchdog, International Energy Agency, says that there will be a staggering oil glut while producers keep pumping. So it looks like fossil fuel energy is going to be around with us for a while.
Yeah.
In spite of all the campaign for green energy.
Now, if you look at the report, we have been told that the projected demand is about 105.4 million barrel, and that we have been told that the oil, the production will increase by about 8 million barrel per day, and that by 2030 there will be more productions, within the global communities, and that's to say that by the time you have more production, the consequence of that is that the price of oil will reduce. I think those countries who rely on oil for foreign earning and should be able to, begin to plan now, because by the time you have enough production, and it makes sense that the price will also reduce. And at the end of the day, it is the government that rely on sales of crude oil for their foreign earning that will suffer it, and of course the people will also benefit, because the cost of buying this product will reduce drastically. Isn't
it ironical? So this story tells us that there's continued investment by oil producers led by the US.
Yeah.
At the same time, the Western countries are also the ones pioneering, championing green energy, but they continue investment in oil.
Because
what does that tell developing countries or African countries about their policies?
Well, it is what benefits them. They're all interested in what benefits them and all that. I think there's a lesson for Africans to learn from this politics. I'm talking of the oil politics. They are doing everything to ensure that the cost of oil, buying oil, is reduced, and at the same time they're also making huge investment. So, and it tells us that there's a global politics within the oil sector, and Africans should be more strategic in the way they also, handle their own issues. So that at the end of the day, they are not taken by surprise.
And even for African countries, there seems like there won't be, very quickly or very soon, an escape from the resource trap. Because if you're talking about green energy, you still need resources. A lot of them mined from African countries to produce the green energies, the batteries, and the host of other things that go with that new industry that is being created. So that says that African countries have to be strategic in the future, from now, actually.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And that's why I keep on saying that in order to be able to also respond to the global politics within the energy market, Africans need to be more strategic. They need to be innovative and begin to plan for the future. And if this didn't happen, how are they going to respond to that? And for example, if there's a fall in the global oil price, for example, how would Nigeria respond to that? Knowing fully well that almost about 90% of our foreign earning is tied to sales of crude oil in the global market. Like you said, Africans, Nigerians need to be more strategic in the way they respond to some of these issues.
For this government, do you see any plans? Do you think that they are focused on this, understanding the geopolitical politics, that is going on and how this affects us? Do you see this government being able, to navigate all of this?
Well, there are policies and programs by the government being designed to divest the economy, in a way that you also begin to invest in other sectors, so that you don't just rely on the sales of crude oil as your only source of foreign earning. I think there is policies and programs being directed towards that. Whether they will have the capacity or the wherewithal to be able to carry out such policies and programs is a different thing entirely.
Okay, so let's go to newspaper. That's to the UK. Here, Labour set to announce big cut to public services in the UK. It says that it will announce significant spending cuts. The manifesto will not include new spending promises. Obviously, then election time, the Tories, the Labour Party and other parties are vying or fighting for votes from the electorate.
Yeah.
So these are important points,
yes.
During an election time.
Yeah, that's ahead of the election
yes.
in maybe July. I think it's about July 4th.
Yes, in July.
4th, yeah. And there are so many issues that's being thrown out during this campaign ahead of the election. The issue of economy, the issue of health, the issue of welfare. So many things have been thrown out as far as this campaign is concerned. And you know that consistently the Labour is ahead of others in the pool, in several polls that have been conducted.
Yes, we are hearing they are gaining ground.
Yes, yes. So for the Conservatives to be able to retain a state in power, they need to address so many of these issues that have been thrown up. Because at the end of the day, like you said, the campaign in UK, for example, and the US, they are purely issue-based campaign. It's not about sentiment. It's not about people whipping up religious or ethnic sentiment. It's about issues. And the major issue in UK today is the economy.
Yes.
It's about health. It's about the welfare of the people.
They're talking about NHS as well.
Exactly.
Spending costs, and people are like, this is one of the major things, hospitals and healthcare that we have.
Absolutely. So if parties that are want to participate in these elections, I'll be able to address some of these issues, give a very strategic ways of resolving some of these issues, I'm sure the people will be willing to vote for such a political party.
I went to the UK sometime last year, towards the end of last year, and it wasn't the same. I think COVID did a number on that country and a lot of other countries. Talk about poverty, talk about suffering. You would see it, especially in the cities in the northern part of the country. So they are struggling, and people are really looking forward to having a government. They say the Conservatives haven't been great. To have a government that cares for the people or that will turn around the economy for good.
Yeah, that's where you have a very good democracy. If you elect a government and you expect so many things from that government, and at the end of the day, the government is not able to meet your expectation, either deliberately or by way of mismanaging the economic or mismanaging so many things. So the citizens, the people have the opportunity to change that government. And I think that's exactly what is happening now. In the last few weeks, several polls have been conducted, and you could see clearly that the Labour Party is ahead because they've been able to push their case to the people and say, okay, we have alternatives to some of these issues that is facing them, and that if you vote us, we'll be able to tweak the entire process and see how the people can benefit. So, and that is the beauty of democracy. And that is a country that will not rely on people to ring elections to be able to change government. And I think that's exactly what Nigerians should be, working towards. Holding government accountable. Being able to tell the government at the end of the year, say, look, you have not done well. Yes. And at the end of the day, you are not going to have my vote for the second term.
Yes.
That's the beauty of democracies. Okay. And Nigerians will have a lot to learn from these democracies around the world. Dr.
Iyobose Owogiaren, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's the press review. For more, follow us on X at The Rise TV.